All right, let's bring in my panel now, joined by Liberal Senator for South Australia, Alex Antic in Canberra, and Nick Cater from the Menzies Research Centre. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. I want to just pick up, we'll get to some bigger issues, but I think this is just an early indication of where the Minns government sits in its own truth-telling. These internal government emails, Nick Cater, I was going to call you Nick Minchin, Nick Cater, between staff members in the Premier's own department. Well, they reveal that the decision to bar the Opera House from painting the sails, coronation ciphers, was actually a political decision. We heard too the Premier claiming it was $100,000 or more. We're told somewhere that the cost could be as low as $10,000, and certainly those sails have been used to celebrate plenty of events since the coronation. Are you surprised?
Well, I am, to be honest, Peter. I thought better of Chris Minns. He obviously is not quite as smart as he thinks he is. He doesn't recognise that whatever his own views about the Republic, he is a premier who's appointed under a system in which the Crown is head of state, and he has to recognise that. I don't care if it's 10,000, 100,000, 200,000. It's not the cost here, is it? I mean, we spent a fortune, I forget the amount, putting a Aboriginal flagpole on the Harbour Bridge. This, after all, is, we've moved from one monarch to another, the first in my lifetime, the first in most people's lifetimes. The cost is a really pathetic excuse.
I couldn't agree more, and I certainly would have been more than $10,000 to send all the dignitaries over to London for the ceremonies. The least they could do is let the rest of the country in Australia commemorate, a historic milestone. Let's go to that Qantas decision if we can, Alex Antic. They lost their High Court bid to overturn a ruling, this is a federal court ruling, that they had illegally outsourced 1,700 ground handler jobs. It's likely they'll pay a hefty fine, compensation too. And meanwhile, the ACCC is taking them on in the federal court for engaging in false, misleading and deceptive conduct, says the ACCC. And this is over the advertising of 8,000 flight tickets for flights that are already cancelled. And then there's the Qatari issue. I mean, it's going from bad to worse, and it doesn't look like Catherine King is across her brief, does it?
Well, it's been a bad week for the Flying Kangaroo, and it's been a bad week for Minister King as well, of course. And I'd have to say a bad week for the Albanese government on the back of all of those issues. And one of the things I would say, though, is it's been a good week for Senator Tony Sheldon from the ALP, frankly. He's had an incredible win, as part of his part in the TWO's push here. And I saw it with my own eyes today. I never thought I'd see it, but such is the apathy for where Qantas has got to in the Senate chamber today when he was asking some questions in question time and this subject came up. There was a sort of a noticeable ripple of agreement, I think, from our side of the chamber, from pockets which sort of almost indicated where Qantas has dropped to at this point. But that doesn't deter from the fact that the Albanese government is, has cosied up to Alan Joyce and is now seemingly he's a missing man. He doesn't appear in any single photographs or anywhere. You can't find him. It's, where's Alan with a sort of a red hat and a set of glasses looking around? It's a bizarre week.
And of course, Nick Cater, they were trumpeting Qantas being one of the early adopters of the Yes campaign and all the livery on the fuselage of the planes and the PM standing there and crowing that every time we land a plane and have that acknowledgement of country, that's going to turn votes the yes way. Of course, I think it's actually a heavy negative. There's a breaking story in the Daily Telegraph, just as we go to air, that has Thomas Mayo, one of the voice architects, or one of the Yes campaign architects, out there arguing that the unions should be using their right of entry ability to go on to workplaces and urge people to vote yes. Now, none of this is helping the Yes campaign.
No, I think that's right, Peter, and I think it's interesting to imagine how this would have played out if Qantas was not such an overtly heavy-handed player in the Yes campaign. I think people still would have been angry at what's been happening at Qantas. They would have been angry at the Qatar decision. But I think undoubtedly ordinary people are feeling this much, much more strongly because Qantas has been such a virtue signaller. What a wonderful airline we are. I will just put in a plug for Rex, by the way. I flew from Rex from South Australia to South Australia from Sydney a few weeks ago, and how delightful it was to land without getting a sermon. So Qantas is really winding people up, and I think they've got to really reassess on the back of this negative publicity.